I thought today, for a bit of a change, we'd look at an old Games Workshop game of mine that I've been playing again with my son. Recently, we play modern Games Workshop games, Age of Sigmar, I play with my son, Underworlds, I play with my wife. And we've played classic Warhammer Quest before, and I've reviewed this on the channel. But here we're going to look at Warhammer 40,000 second edition. This is my original box. And we'll have a look through some bits and pieces without completely seriously engaging with all those. We'll just see some of my collection of paperwork, and we'll look. We've got a couple of models here. We'll give a tiny set of rules demonstrations for 1 or 2 points of things. So yeah, this was my second GW game. Epic Space Marine was my first. This, by the way, is from my original box set. This is me painting as a 10-year-old or so, maybe 12 or 13-year-old. This is not my painting. I do have an Instagram, by the way, where I do put up photos, essentially just of me painting my miniature painting, because I don't do that anywhere else. But this was my second boxed game from GW, and it would have been 95, 96, I guess, or something like that. I think, was this 93? Did this is the rule book, by the way. The 93 it came out, so I would have got about 95, 96. And here's the the famous cover, the Blood Angel fighting off hordes of space orcs. And in this has bagged in with it my Dark Millennium expansion, which I'm missing a few cards from, which I may still be able to find. They may still be actually at my parents' house, because most of it came up in different kind of dribs and drabs over the years to where I live now, but there might be a few things left there. And you can see there's all kinds of bits. We'll look at the books in a second, but this is terrain, which will be, I think we're going to copy some of the ideas off minisodes, and base this onto foam core and make it thicker. But these original cardboard terrain, including kind of the upper floor for ruined buildings, and these are strengtheners, which I never used, like little strengtheners, which we probably will use. So yeah, that's that. We've got some there's some dice. That's actually a friend's tin of dice, which he's merged in with my collection. Lots of things, like here's the little basic stats you got in the box. So rather than army lists for your particular squads, you got these were essentially your army lists. This told you all the rules for the units that you needed. Rules summaries, and I've printed out, because I don't have, I'll put those there, I'll come back to that actually. More rules summaries, war gear summaries. This is all the weapons, all the cool. This is an era, the second edition, and it starts to change even by third edition, which I did play. Second and third edition 40k were the editions I played. Because I never really got fully out of miniatures, I always noodled around. So far as I played 40k, I played second and third edition, and didn't really play 40k afterwards. But even by third edition, you saw this movement away from kind of all this wild equipment, web guns. Who remembers web guns and web pistols? And a sort of real granularity and diegetic, simulated, kind of simulationist fun of like, oh, look at these weird, funky weapons. Let alone, and I have played a decent amount of 8th more recently, and where, and I see even more when I look at 9th and 10th reports and reviews and stuff, is moving away from the weirdness towards a much more mathematically reliable model, which I think pleases competitive gamers and is maybe less fun for those of us who don't care as much. This was actually from White Dwarf. This is some extra rules for Chaos in second edition. Hey, some original ones of these. These are 18-inch measuring sticks. These are actually not very good. They're good in terms of they're 18 inches, which is very useful to have the length, but they are hard to read. I know people often colour them in and stuff, or paint them in. They're not legible basically against the board. This is actually a modern 40k one, which I quite like. It's only 12 inches though. This one came from a magazine. You've got templates. Templates went out of style more recently. They lasted for a while longer, but you've got, this one's from Dark Millennium, for different powers and effects. You've got these ones from the core game, 3-inch down to 1-inch. And they tell you what they need: rad and tanglefoot grenades, mole mortars, and conversion beamers. Mole mortars, by the way, were a weapon only used by squats, the infamous squats. There you go. More grenade sizes, multi-weapon heavy webbers, etc., etc. The vortex grenade, the very dangerous vortex grenade. So yeah, templates, more templates here. Look at this. Yeah, more templates. This is a vehicle. This is not a template for attacking. This is a vehicle turning template. You have. Here's the thud gun. This is something where you randomize each strike. You randomize the direction again, and then So basically, you could hit in a straight line like that, or it could be all twisty turny as to where it goes. And the Foot of Gork, this is also from the Dark Millennium expansion. So, hey, if you're here, lucky you, you might only just get hit. But if you're right underneath it, it's kersplat. There's Vortex Grenade marker again. Some flamers. I think there's a hand flamer around here or in a different pile somewhere. But flame templates. Again, you put them out and see who's underneath them. If they're only partially underneath them, it's a 4, 5, or 6 chance to hit them. So you don't roll to hit, you just hit, and then you have to still wound. We'll talk about that briefly. Vehicle data faxes. There's my hand flamer, and there's the 1-inch template. The hand flamer you can see is much dinkier. Compare that to your heavy flamer template. But of course, the hand flamer is a pistol. And things like this matter for the detail about what you can use in close combat, what weapons you can combine at any one time. Vehicle data faxes. Again, this is something. This had some of these things to do with armor penetration continue up until 8th, I think, when it moves back to wounds, which is what Rogue Trader Warhammer 40k First Edition had done. But here you've got. This is a collection, by the way, of stuff from White Dwarf, stuff from the core box, stuff from Dark Millennium. It's including Squat Heavy Biker. I want one of these. There's the Eldar Falcon Grav Tank, and there's a Datafax printed by my friend who we have a Fire Prism. My son has a Fire Prism, beautifully painted actually, but which was my friend's, and this is its Datafax. And you can see there's a bunch of stuff. It has individual crew. If you're more familiar with modern 40k, some of this will seem weird. Individual crew. It's got a RAM value and damage, and the way that the strength is part of how you work out if it destroys buildings, because you can destroy buildings in the same way there are certain weapons that can destroy foliage. You can be either at a stop, go up to slow speed, combat speed, or fast speed, and this affects your ability to turn. It's a lot easier to turn at slow speed. And you can see it's got its various kind of stats for weapons. Vehicle options, weapon options. So here, the Chaos Dreadnought one I have, there's, as some people call him, Mr. Tickle. You can see that this gives you the points values as well. And you'll see in the codexes and in army lists, you'll sometimes put towards data faxes for information about what a particular thing can do, a particular weapon can do. Here, I've realised something else. I'll have to just tell you, but because I noticed some other things that use little stands. But yeah, I'll have to tell you about one thing I do have that is not here. Here are war gear cards. This is a bit like modern data sheet kind of things, where you have the unit stats in front of you, a bit like the unit stat cards we already looked at, or the data faxes. It's just telling you what the magic item is, but or in this case, war gear, magic item for fantasy, but you're buying them individually. Here, I was going to say we have yet more templates. Here is the Death Wave, which then it basically moves out. Imagine he's not a psyker, this Space Marine, but imagine he was, and he launches it and it comes out from him and heads off, and whoever it strikes, it may harm. I don't have the standees for these. I only have one standee left, but these two are for a spell, a psionic power called the Gate. You can travel between them. You can have them up to 36 inches apart, in fact, at creation, 3 feet. And people can travel from one end to the other. The thing that is using my one standee, which is not here because it is in my Orc Army box, is my cardboard Dreadnought. That's one thing that they include, which we can get a photo up of actually, if we just move some things, and we'll come back to all this cool stuff in a minute. Here, back of the box, you can see you got one of these. Which, yes, I have. That is in the Orc box, though, because that is actually their Dreadnought. Let's look at some other stuff. These are from White Dwarf. Chaos Reward cards. These are like, war gear. A Scream of Slanesh. You can scream when when a champion of Slanesh charges, it causes fear. Destiny of Tzeentch. Fortune of Tzeentch. So you can see that they're like the war gear cards, but they're special for that. Here are vehicle upgrades, vehicle war gear cards. Standard vehicle, Space Marine vehicle, Eldar vehicle, Imperial vehicle, Orc vehicle. And they are things much like you'd expect. A hunter killer missile, like a bonus weapon, a heavy flamer. This is if you're upgrading something that can have a heavy bolter. It's just giving you the information about it in case you need to know. Psionic powers. These are, as I'm missing a few of these. I think I'm missing like one of a couple of other things. I'm missing more or less one card each here. Alas, in one way, I'm missing several cards. In another way, you don't need them. The way the system describes it, you need them because you deal cards to psychers. But actually, that's not a hard limit if you're allowed to combine sets of Dark Millennium to have extra versions of the same card. But yeah, you can see there for different factions. Tyranids, they only use these ones, and Adeptus cards for Genestealer Magi. Tzeentch, the Chaos Guard, Nurgle, Slanesh, not Khorne, because Khorne only wants blood. Librarian and Adeptus powers, that's why I'm missing the cards. Inquisition cards, so yeah, lots of different options for sub-factions. Squat Psionics for their living ancestors. Eldar Psionics, Orc Psionics. And yeah, you're dealt these as spells, and you cast them using cards from the Warp deck. Basically, you cast them using by much like in Warhammer back in the day, you'd have the Winds of Magic. You'd work out the Psychic Surge or whatever it's called, and you get a certain number of cards, which could be special cards, Nullify, Reflection, Psychic Jewel, or they could be Force cards. And you cast your spells, your Psionic powers, with Force cards. And you can use the other cards for other purposes, as you'd imagine. You can dispel, nullify. You can try to kill the enemy psychic with a special attack. This is a combination of strategy cards. These are things you'd be dealt some of at the start of the game, basically, for a set, depending on the size of the game. One per 1,000 or part thereof points? And, you might have something like saved. You might get a strafing run. Someone comes and attacks for you. You might have an ambush where troops can crawl forward. Basically, they can deploy 12 inches out of their zone. You can have someone take the hit for a grenade, which is important for some grenades, which really could devastate your army. So yes, you can see loads of stuff there. Let's put the data faxes back in. Let's just get the remaining stuff. This is cool. This is just useful. Turn tracker, VP tracker. Mission cards. You could each take a mission. And this includes, I think, the bonus ones that you could get. Guerrilla War and Witch Hunt look like they're different colours, so I assume they're the ones that came. Was it Dark Millennium they came in? Someone told me in the comments. Each side takes one, and that kind of gives them a bonus VP opportunity on top of destroying troops. So Witch Hunt, killing enemy psychers or enemy characters, basically. Counters, you've got wound markers, virus grenade markers. You need markers for some stuff like whether someone's shaken, Space Marines, or broken for other people, or for Space Marines. If weapons jam, sustained weapons jam, if someone is on fire, if a vehicle's at fast speed. So use markers for that kind of thing. And yes, so yeah, you can see there's a lot of cardboard that comes with this game, and it's bright, it's colourful, and I think that's one of the things that appeals to people into old Hammer, into retro Warhammer stuff, is that the aesthetics of up to 2nd edition 40k and up to 5th edition Warhammer are bright. They're not grim dark. There is dark art at points, grim dark art. You can't escape some of the tones of John Blanche and indeed Dave Gallagher art, but you can see that even this stuff there's lots of bright colours in it, suffice to say. And there's all this weird crunchy stuff like, great, so which weird template are we using today? There's a lot of encouragement in the rulebooks, which we'll look at the rulebooks. We won't kind of obviously go through them in detail, but we'll look at the rulebooks. Lots of encouragement to kind of, look, you're going to have to make up your own rules along the way. You're going to have to work out fringe situations. It's an assumption of a hobby game. So these are all really appealing things. And I remember, because I remember moving to 6th edition Warhammer and to 3rd edition 40k, which are more mechanically serious games in some ways. They're both good games, but the aesthetics and some of the vibe changes, and it is a shame. And I think there's also remnants. 2nd edition is also a time of great creativity. It partly leads to odd things or things that surprise us, like the real reason the squats were squatted, as much as it's kind of cool and weird to have these remnants of old lists. They never get developed and they're eventually officially destroyed until the Leagues of Votan, their cousins, come in recently. But basically because the studio liked designing them in Epic because they had cool ideas, but they didn't like designing them in 40k because they didn't have cool ideas. And though that's not necessarily the most professional of reasons to destroy a faction people might have liked, it's a very understandable creative one. You can see there's a great creative surge as GW becomes this real force in selling these big games with all these miniatures. I think those edges are smoothed out even as some real improvements come later on. Much like I've said, Warhammer Quest in the 90s is the best old school role-playing game that's published in the 90s. There is something still very appealing and functional about these rules, having played modern rules. I play modern rules for Sigmar at least a lot, because my son plays it a lot. But these rules are still functional and good. We played a game of this and we enjoyed it, and we're going to play more and probably record some of that. We'll briefly look then at the books, and then maybe just roll some dice briefly. Maybe we'll have these guys here as a useful kind of we'll have our dice. By the way, dice you might need. There's different damage code dice. It's not just a D6 game, but there are, which is weird. Something that disappears when they realise you can sell D6s easily and you can produce them easily. But you need scatter dice. That's a hit. That's it. Scattering. I assume, I can't see, but there will be. There's a sustained fire die. Artillery dice, which were also used in Warhammer Fantasy. You had 3 types of specialist dice plus needing extra damage dice. You got the specialist dice in the box though, so that was good. Otherwise, you were told how to simulate D12 results. For instance, are you in a high or a low tier? Roll 1 to 3, 4 to 6 on a D6, and then roll again. So you've got your rule book, the core book, the core box came with 5 books originally. I only ever got 4 of them. One of them is not advertised on the box or mentioned here, and I don't think it was in the box by 95-96 because I don't believe I ever had it. But you got the rule book, which is the rules. War gear, which is basically because equipment is complicated, you get lots of stuff. This is a cool book, by the way, just for art purposes. I mean, it's not the most important thing in the world, but it's just a cool book to read. You got war gear, which is all the equipment. And then Codex Imperialis, which was the setting. This is really ground zero for 40k as a modern setting, as a setting that settles beyond its rogue trooper form and for instance, goes into Space Marines being these sort of genetically engineered super warriors, demigods. Much of what modern 40k is here, as well as a lot of this kind of older vibe as well. It also has base stats, not points, it's not army lists, but it has base stats for everything, and special abilities. Runt herds can lead snotlings and Gretchen, whereas normal orc leaders cannot. So orc knobs, big bosses and war bosses cannot. It gives you all the special rules for different units. Storm boys, this is that they are rebellious young orcs who live an orderly lifestyle instead of being crazy. Mad boys, they've got a bit mad. They do random stuff. Again, some of this stuff lore-wise is similar, but you can see aesthetically changes. As a collector of orcs, a massive collection of orcs, old and new, you see that that the cuteness goes away, the kind of funniness goes away. The Eldar aesthetic, on the other hand, has generally speaking not changed, and always very beautiful Jez Goodwin art, etc. You've got and this is, for instance, this is where I knew about squats from, essentially, and Genestealer cults. There was then there was a book, in fact, it's just I showed you the sheets before. There was a booklet of scenarios. This was kind of your learn to play, more or less, because it was just 3 scenarios, a 4th you get in White Dwarf, which you could connect with campaign rules as well, which was just using the stuff in the box. The campaign rules use other stuff, but the scenarios only use the stuff in the box. So you could play these scenarios, and you could, that was fun. basically. You had your own army lists sourced already, and you had a meaningful story to tell. You also had, and that's something which I'm trying to get hold of a hard copy. I doubt it, because I think some of this may have been destroyed in floods, but I may still have a copy of that at my parents' house. That never came up. There was also the Codex Army lists, which were get you by lists for second edition until codices, the main codexes, replaced them. And these, I don't think I ever had. Or if I did, I don't remember them, to put it differently. And they're not mentioned elsewhere in the official material, but they did come packaged in this box. I have a PDF of them now. But that's where the only squat army list that ever existed for second edition, and the only Genestealer cult list for second edition, though obviously Genestealer cults came back, were in there. You also got rules for Adeptus Mechanicus, which was a fairly detailed list, actually, as part of Imperial Agents. They had 2 characters, 3 squads, and they could take various vehicle and artillery types. You can have a proper... if you saw that as legal for the game, you could have a pretty serious AdMech army. The main expansion was just that, along with all the cardboard, was this one book. 36 pages or whatever it is. Or 48 books of catalogue pages. By the way, there was a squat champion. I think that's a second edition squat champion that was never released. Because they designed like 8 miniatures for second edition, then didn't release them because they were, as the term goes, squatted. Yes, you can see that basically, catalogue pages are common because they're trying to sell you models, but psionics are the biggest thing here, all the way down to there. 26 demons. Demons, you get rules about how to summon them, strategy cards, how to use them, and then extra rules for vehicles and support weapons, and victory points tables. So yes, this is essentially there are get you by psionic rules, which are, there are 6 powers, one of which only orcs can use in this book, and you can't, the way they are cast is it doesn't use the Dark Millennium system, you can see by the time you get to the Warhammer 5th edition book, there's a slightly more organised system, and they know that they mention they're going to have a supplement called Dark Millennium, but for Warhammer 5th, which is what I have, they're like, hey, Warhammer Battle Magic used cards. The magic system in this game uses kind of cards and dice and stuff, but here's the get you by. At this point, this is still fairly experimental, and you can feel that. But Dark Millennium is a step up in terms of it gives the magic element to the game, as well as a miscellany of other things. So that's what that is. I got this for £2, by the way, because it has a tear in it, which I need to fix, actually. I then have, in hard copy, the other, you can get everything in PDF these days, but I have Codex Orcs. Look at genuinely gorgeous cover. Very famous John Blanche cover here. Codex Sisters of Battle. Codex Tyranids. Codex Angels of Death. I got this one recently. And Codex Eldar. I had Orcs, Sisters of Battle, and Eldar back in the day. And then Tyranids inherited from my friend whose Genestealer this is. And Angels of Death I bought myself. So yeah, these were or are just lots of things that they're selling. It's interesting when you compare it to 90s RPGs, where a lot of the point is collection. This hits both. The models are there for collecting. I did play war games in the 90s, and I eventually joined a war game club and mostly got into historicals actually at that point in lots of ways, and played historical video games. But there's obviously a thing where this is straddling the different selection. You've got your catalogue pages. You've got glorious, painted colour sections, including on the covers. You have lore, several pages of lore. You have a section, a quarter of the book's lore, but then you have rules for monsters. This is also favourable because you have flavour and you have art. And then you have lists and rules for selecting an army. As you expect. This one also includes I told a lie before, sorry, this does include the Genestealer list, the Genestealer cult list. It's not its own list, basically, it's a sub-list of Tyranids, like Chaos cults are a sub-list of Chaos. And so yeah, you got, you might get extra war gear cards, you might get extra missions or whatever it might be, you got all kinds of extra stuff in them. And you can see they're selling to the whole market there. The modelers, who they knew were a major part of the market, that's why they'd shifted away from RPGs and even away from board games. In the mid-90s, in terms of board games, they only sold them with miniatures, but was basically just Space Hulk and Quest. And that was something where Quest particularly is heading heavily towards, like, there are even rules in White Dwarf for, doing outdoor battles, outdoor adventures in Quest. The idea was really you were on the modelling side of the hobby playing games which might have board sections, whereas, 40k is obviously all the way miniatures, but they're appealing to modelers because they make the money with the miniatures. There is a real joie de vivre about all these books, by the way, I should say. They're just incredibly fun, incredibly flavourful, incredibly funny at points. Maybe Warhammer Armies books actually are some of the arch examples of that, with Nigel Stillman writing, so for fantasy instead. But that era was full of that. I mean, Anki Panky, the Skink Champion. Lots of just silliness and relatively young men at the time having fun. So let's just quickly say, a lot of the basic rules are pretty easy. I mean, there's the fact you have all this crazy stuff. That is the not cruft, that's insulting, but that's the flavour. But the basic rules, you've just got stuff like check who has initiative, and then in your turn, basically you move, fire, do close combat, do psionic phase, and then I think it's the rally phase. After that, it'll say on somewhere. We won't worry too much about that. We've got this. There we go. You can see movement, shooting, hand-to-hand, psychic, rally. And the idea is you are meant to be able to just end up mostly using this for rules. You can see it's got... you need the weapon rules and the kind of funny rules like that, or what's going to take your time up. But, you say, well, it's the Space Marine term. If the Space Marine's going first here, well, he can move. Let's very slightly. There we go. We'll do our best. Sorry about this. Realize that our angle is slightly too depressed. But, he's over here and he wants to get over to this off-screen Genestealer. So he could choose to move. He's a Space Marine. He can move 4. He could choose to run. If he runs, well, okay, we've got a token for that. I'm not going to find the token in time. I'm just going to pretend but that's a run token. Running tokens are a token you can get, and he's run. That means he can't do other stuff. He can't charge. He can't whatever. But that he can move twice his distance. He could, because he's 12 away, because this is a 12-inch long ruler, he could actually stay here and fire twice in the shooting phase, because Space Marines have a rule called rapid fire, which means they can fire twice with bolt weapons, like with the particular specialist weapons they are big on. On the other hand, what's the Genestealer going to do? Well, the Genestealer can't fire anything. Now, he could run. Of course, one thing, let's say the Space Marine is here and the Genestealer is here. Well, what if you want to get into close combat? Well, you do something called a charge. Rather than a run, you do a charge. You declare you want to enter close combat. And you're not allowed to measure this. No measurements before. You have to basically learn to guesstimate. There's no free measurement. But you can run in, and in fact, in this case, it's within 8, and you get to the guy. On the other hand, if the Space Marine's back here, well, Genestealer is going to run in and he's going to stop right in front of the Space Marine, who next turn gets 2 shots against him. Space Marine needs a 4+ to hit. He then misses both of his shots on his turn because he's rapid fired. Let's pretend briefly that the Space Marine had hit. In our mini game here, I'm afraid that the Space Marine has not hit. But let's say he had hit. Well, he got a 4. He then has a strength 4 weapon, which is what bolters have. And we go and we check out our Genestealer toughness 4. T there on the stat line. You can see, by the way, ballistic skill 0 BS. That means it can't fire guns. Weapon skill 7, they're very good at fighting. So it needs strength 4 versus toughness 4. Well, you can look it up on the chart. You can do all this on the chart. You can see that to hit, ballistic skill 3, 4+. Target's toughness 4. You need a 4. So let's see if he hits. He would not wound. If he did wound, the Genestealer might have a chance at a save, depending on what the armor penetration of a given shot was. The AP is still a thing now, though. AP is, in some ways, for lots of weapons, I think much more exaggerated now, having played 8th. Not an expert, though. The next turn, though, obviously Genestealer can get into close combat. Gets into close combat. And he's gonna try to eat this guy, isn't he? Well, So here we're back, hand-to-hand combat. Well, you throw attack dice, you roll a number of d6 equal to your attacks, you work out the combat score, your highest die, and you add your weapon skill, and whoever wins strikes a blow, essentially. So, you know the Genestealer has a 7, and so he's going to roll at least a 6. It's not going to get better than that, is it? But his number of attacks is 4. He's very good at attacking, so he's actually going to attack again, and again, and again. In fact, his 6 was going to be the best. So you've got 13 combat score, generically speaking. What about the Space Marine? What about the Space Marine? Well, we can look it up in Angels. We can look various places. We've got the stats, of course, but let's look in here. What we can see is that Space Marines have a weapon skill. They actually have a ballistic skill of 4. So it would have been a 3+ hit before. But yeah, weapon skill of 4, but only 1 attack. So they get 5. 13 to 5. Well, that is definitely a Genestealer wins. And the number of hits is the number of time, the difference. That is 8 hits. So these are going to be the Genestealer strength versus the Space Marines toughness, the same as what we talked about for shooting. And let's quickly go to our Genestealer page again, and we can see Genestealers have strength 6. So strength 6 versus toughness 4 is 2+. Okay, that's 3 wounds, and that is another 4 wounds. The Space Marine has 3+ save, yeah, let's just assume that, you know, that he needs his 3+, doesn't he? Even versus this high strength. Looking at close combat weapons on this, there's no separate entry for claws, as far as I can see. So I don't know that. Is there a separate save modifier? Who knows? I mean, logically, you'd think there's going to be a -3 save, which means they're going to need 6s. But yes, you can see that off that he's definitely failed at least twice. And possibly an extra 2 times. He only got 1 wound, so the Space Marine is dead. You can see that they've got good shots. They're quite tough and stuff, you know, but Genestealers are specialised for killing people in close combat. And there's rules for leadership, all kinds of rules for leadership and stuff. You know, if the Space Marine squad that he's part of, let's say there's 4 guys in it and he dies, that's 25% within a turn. They take a leadership check, they would pass that because their leadership is 7. Or let's say, and if they failed, Space Marines actually need 2 break checks to fully break, whereas most units only need 1. So you can see there's granularity there. Some monsters cause fear or terror, which means you might need to flee away from the enemy or you might not be allowed to approach them. There's also stupidity, frenzy, and hatred. These are all things familiar for people who play fantasy, particularly where a lot of these rules were current into the successor editions when fantasy ended, the fan editions. But yeah, I'm going to make some more 40k videos after this. I think we'll do the Battle for Armageddon, and I'm going to be painting some of my orcs, my classic orcs for October, and so I will probably put some stuff up for that as well if people are interested. But yeah, tell me your thoughts in the comments. Did you play 2nd edition? Did you play any of these other older editions of Fantasy 40k? What were your factions? Tell me in the comments, and I'll see you next time.